Why Dad shouted, "All you do is take. You've never given this family anything." Then he told me to leave if I had any pride, so I left quietly. A month later, my sister called, crying, "Why did the tuition payment stop?" I texted back, "I thought I never gave this family anything." Then I watched them all fall apart without me. My name's Nolan, I'm 29 now, and up until last year, I really believed I understood what it meant to be part of family. Not the sugar-coated greeting card version, but the kind you hold up even when your back's breaking from the weight of it. The kind you sacrifice for, quietly, without expecting anything in return. I've always been that guy. The dependable one. The son who remembers birthdays, who sends flowers without fail, who notices the mess and cleans it up when no one else even realizes there is one. But I never imagined I'd become the foundation of a family that treated me like I was replaceable. That realization didn't crash in all at once. It crept in, slow and silent, like water leaking beneath floorboards. Unseen until the whole thing starts to buckle. I'm a middle child, which probably explains a few things. My older brother, Grant, was the star quarterback, the life of the party. Always the guy with a crowd around him. Like a personal entourage, my younger sister, Grant, was the darling from day one, spoiled, adored, and fussed over like a porcelain doll. And me? I was the kid bringing home B+s, constantly hearing that I wasn't living up to my potential. Honestly, I didn't dwell on it. I kept my head down, snagged a scholarship, and moved out as soon as I could. Eventually, I started a small IT firm that, somehow, took off after 3 brutal years filled with instant noodles, endless hours, and more rejections than I can count. Funny thing is, when I was clawing my way up, they were nowhere to be found. But the moment I started earning real money, suddenly, I was family again. It began subtly. My dad asked if I could help out with the remainder of Grant's car loan, just until his promotion came through. Then it was Grant's tuition, apparently. Her financial aid didn't quite cover everything. After that, my mom brought up needing a new roof. Then the heating system went, and of course, she'd always dreamed of remodeling the kitchen. Before I knew it, I was footing the bill for 3 households, yet I was still getting texts like, "Hey, can you Venmo me for groceries?" At first, I didn't think much of it. I told myself I was lucky to be in a position to help. In fact, I spun this narrative in my head that I was building something meaningful, a legacy. Maybe I imagined someday, looking back with pride, knowing I'd made life better for the people I cared about. But their attitude, that cold, entitled expectation, slowly started to gnaw at me. Last Thanksgiving was the moment everything shifted. I hosted, not because I was trying to show off, but because for once I had a place big enough to fit everyone comfortably. I hired caterers, had the house spotless, even set up a fire pit out back. Not one person offered to help. Not with prep, not with dishes, nothing. Grant raised a glass halfway through dinner and gave his whole speech about how lucky we all are, how family always shows up for each other. He didn't mention that I paid for every bite on the table. Grant brought a new boyfriend, barely made eye contact with anyone, glued to her phone the entire evening. And my dad? He spent most of the night griping about how much harder things were in his day, insisting my generation had it easy. I smiled through it all, but inside, something was already shifting, pulling away like a tide. Then came the night, it all came undone. It was just a regular Tuesday. A couple of months later, I had a long day of meetings and walked in to find a voicemail from my dad. His voice was tight, clipped, laced with that specific kind of disappointment only fathers seem perfect. He said, "All you do is take. You've never given this family anything worth remembering. If you had any pride, you'd stop acting like we owe you something and just leave." I froze at first. I thought I misheard him, so I played again. "All you do is take." I didn't scream. I didn't even pick up the phone. I just stared at my screen for a long while, then turned toward the window. The city lights I used to admire looked cold and distant. Something inside me, something old and tired, snapped like a rusted hinge finally giving out. That night, I quietly packed a bag and walked out. No dramatic exits, no emotional send-offs. I even asked my assistant to suspend all payments linked to my family's accounts. Just like that, it was done, a clean, quiet break. Days passed, then a week, total silence. Nobody called, nobody texted. It took almost a month before anyone noticed. Grant was the first. She rang late one Friday night, her voice shaking beneath a thin layer of forced calm. "Hey, Nolan, so I just checked my school portal, and it looks like tuition didn't go through this month. Did something happen with the account?" You know that voice people use when they're trying not to sound panicked, but totally are? That was it. I replied with a single text. "Thought I never gave this family anything." No context, no follow-up, just that. She didn't respond, but within the hour, I had 4 missed calls from my mom, 2 from Grant, and 1 from an unknown number, the voicemail from my dad. Darkly comedic. Nolan, we need to talk. Whatever this little stun is, it's not funny. Your sister's future is on the line. Still no apology, just the same guilt-trip tone that screamed, "You owe us." That weekend, I flew to Denver. I'd never been, but I needed to be somewhere that felt far enough away, somewhere beyond the gravity of their expectations. I rented a small Airbnb with a view of the mountains. And I slept, really slept, for the first time in what felt like forever. I didn't check emails. I didn't respond to messages. I just let the world keep spinning without me in it. Back home, the unraveling began. Grant got a notice from her college about impending withdrawal due to unpaid tuition. Grant's car was repossessed. My parents' mortgage bounced. All the weight I'd been silently carrying dropped, and suddenly they realized it was never just help, it was the foundation. And when that disappeared, so did their balance. They scrambled to control the narrative, reached out to extended family, told them I'd cut ties without warning, abandoned them in their time of need. But here's the thing about stories. You can't revise them when enough people already know the truth. And a few of my cousins? They'd seen it all firsthand for years. One of them, Chloe, my mom's niece, sent me a message that caught me off guard. "I've always admired your patience, but I'm proud of you for finally stepping away. You deserve peace." That hit me harder than I expected. The truth is, I wasn't out for revenge. I was chasing peace. That was all I ever really wanted. But the moment you strip away the one thing they've used to hold power over you, the thing that kept you tethered, they start to realize something terrifying. They needed me far more than I ever needed them. That's when the real unraveling began. I spent a week in Denver doing something I hadn't done in years. Absolutely nothing. Each morning I'd stroll to a little coffee shop just a block from the Airbnb. I'd sit there with a journal, sipping my drink, jotting down whatever floated to the surface of my mind. Afterward, I'd wander the streets of downtown with no destination, just letting the quiet sink in. No phone vibrating with demands. No last-minute emergencies disguised as favors. No voice saying, "Hey, can you just help with this one thing?" At first, the silence felt weird, not unwelcome, just unfamiliar, like I had to relearn how to breathe without flinching, as if my body had grown used to bracing for someone else's chaos, someone else's disappointment. By week 2, I'd rented a car and driven up to Boulder. I'd always wanted to go hiking alone. Just me, nature, whatever thoughts came along for the ride. But every time I tried to plan a trip in the past, someone in the family would call with a crisis, a broken AC unit, a credit card about to default. Once, Grant rang from a resort in Cancun, drunk, panicked, claiming she lost her wallet and needed me to wire her cash immediately. That memory surfaced as I stood at the edge of a high trail, wind slicing through my coat, the whole valley opening up beneath me. I laughed, actually laughed. The sound bounced off the rocks and echoed into the emptiness, and it felt real, like something in me had finally unclenched. 3 full weeks went by before my mom finally broke her passive-aggressive silence. She didn't call, she emailed, subject line, "We need you to come home." No, "Hi Nolan." No soft landing, just a wall of text, starting with "Don't know what's gotten into you," and spiraling from there. "Your father is furious. We've done so much for you." And finally, "Family doesn't abandon family." That line stopped me. Family doesn't abandon family. Except they had, over and over again. They abandoned me every time they reduced me to a walking ATM. Every birthday they forgot. Every time they took what I gave and didn't even bother to say thanks. Every holiday where I was just the guy standing behind the camera while Grant played Golden Child and Grant unwrapped gifts like it was a personal award ceremony. But they didn't call that abandonment. They called it tradition. I didn't answer her email. Instead, I forwarded it to Lucas, my lawyer, the same guy who helped me set up a trust fund a few years back. I asked him to begin reallocating the remaining educational payments. I wanted the money to go somewhere it would actually make a difference, specifically a scholarship fund for first-generation college students. Kids like me once was the ones who had no safety net, the ones who wouldn't treat support like a joke behind closed doors. While we were at it, I asked him to look into the ownership details of the lake house, the one my parents swore was a family property, a joint investment. I'd paid for it, every dollar, but something always told me to check. Turns out my name was still on the deed. So I made a decision. That Sunday morning, I booked a flight home, Not to mend fences and definitely not to apologize, but to take stock, literally. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I landed around noon, grabbed a rental, and headed straight to the house. The same one I'd spent thousands renovating after my dad threatened to sell it because of water damage. It looked the same from the outside, familiar but hollow, like a prop house from a sitcom set. Meant to resemble home, but missing the soul. Grant's old truck was in the driveway. I figured he'd moved back in after the repo. Typical. I didn't knock. I still had a spare key. One my mom must have forgotten existed. I let myself in, quiet as a breeze. I barely made it past the entryway when I heard voices from the living room. "He's just being dramatic," Grant said, with that dismissive tone he's perfected since high school. "He'll crawl back when he's done sulking." Then came Grant, softer, confused. "I don't get it. I mean, it's not even that much money to him, is it?" My dad mumbled something I couldn't quite catch, but then, clear as daylight. "Nolan's always been the weak one, hiding behind screen. Acting like throwing money around makes him special." I stood frozen in the hallway, listening to them tear me apart like I hadn't kept the lights on, like I wasn't the reason the roof didn't cave in. But I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't even feel angry. Just resolved. They never saw me, not really. I backed out, walked to the car, and drove straight to the lake house. Inside, it was everything I remembered. The open concept kitchen, the fireplace, and that wall of family photos. Every last one of them missing me. Not even a candid, not even childhood shot. I pulled out my phone and started snapping pictures for the real estate listing. By nightfall, Lucas had everything he needed to put it on the market. That was Saturday. Come Monday, I sent one last message to the family group chat. "You always said I never gave this family anything. So here it is, what you really wanted all along. Space. No more tuition. No more car payments. No more repairs. Sell your own memories. I'm done." Then I left the group chat, blocked them all. I honestly believed that would be the end of it. But what I didn't realize, what I hadn't fully grasped yet, was just how tangled the web had become. And the second I cut those final threads, it all started to collapse. Fast. Grant's school flagged her account for non-payment. Expulsion was suddenly on the table. Grant? He ended up fired after missing too many shifts. Trying to untangle the mess, my parents? Let's just say their bank came knocking with questions about a mortgage they could no longer afford. And me? I was already halfway to the airport for my next trip. This time, Tokyo first class, no guilt. No obligations, no strings attached. But the real twist? What happened the next time they tried to claw their way back into my life? I was somewhere over the Pacific when my phone caught up to the chaos I'd left behind. Dozens of missed calls. Voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably Grant's friends, or people sent to guilt-trip me on my family's behalf. My dad had sent a string of texts that started like threats, but quickly dissolved into fragmented pleas. "We didn't mean it that way. You're still our son." That one actually made me laugh. I didn't listen to a single voicemail, didn't open any of the attachments. I just watched the notifications pile up like a silent slideshow of panic. It's funny how people who once claimed you never gave them anything suddenly remember exactly how much you gave. Once it's gone, Tokyo was exactly what I needed. Clean, quiet, anonymous. I wandered through temples and neon-lit arcades, letting my mind breathe in a way I didn't know it needed. No guilt hanging over me. No emergencies for the first time in my life. I was just me, not a backup plan, not the family fixer. 2 weeks into the trip, I unblocked exactly one person. Chloe, my cousin. She'd sent one message during the entire fallout. No guilt tripping, no dramatics, just, "When you're ready to talk, I'm here. Not to convince you, just to listen." We met after I got back, sat in a cafe near her apartment. She brought her laptop. "I want to show you something," she said, sliding across the table. It was a Reddit thread of all things. Grant had posted under a throwaway account, asking for financial help to stay in school due to a so-called unexpected family emergency. She spun a version of the story that made me out to be the unstable one, claimed I'd abandoned the family for no reason, that I was having a breakdown. People were donating, total strangers. Chloe looked at me, her lips tight. "She's raised almost $6,000 so far, I thought you should know." I stared at the screen, and the emotion I felt wasn't anger. It was sadness. There it was again. The narrative reshaped to cast her as the victim. Only now, she was doing it publicly, profiting from it, turning strangers' sympathy into currency. And the worst part? She still didn't understand what she'd done. That night, I didn't go on a rant or confront her. I chose something quieter. I took screenshots of every payment I'd ever made toward her education. Bank transfers, tuition receipts, even the textbook fund I wired her freshman year. I uploaded them into a private imager album. No names, no captions, just dates, amounts, confirmations. Then I posted one anonymous comment on her thread. Before you donate, maybe ask where the other $90,000 went. Some people forget who helped them when the help stops. It didn't go viral. It didn't need to. Within 24 hours, her post was removed by moderators for suspicious activity, and the tone of the comments shifted. That was the first time any of them faced real consequences. The second came a week later when I received a certified letter at my office. It was from my dad, not handwritten, typed like a legal document. It began with, "We are formally requesting a meeting to discuss the breakdown of our family dynamic." I nearly choked laughing, like they were calling a board meeting to fix what they broke. But buried beneath all the legal-sounding language was the real reason. They want a share of the proceeds from the lake house sale. Apparently, they believed they had emotional equity in the property. I handed the letter to Lucas without a word. He read it, smirked, and asked, "Want me to remind them that emotional equity isn't a legal term?" I nodded. We did one better. We sent them a copy of the original agreement my dad had signed years earlier when I offered to pay for the lake house. In his own words, he had written, "I acknowledge that this home is purchased by and remains the property of Nolan, last name. I relinquish all future claims." He'd either forgotten or hoped I had. That letter shut them up fast. But the silence didn't last long. Not once word got out that I was selling the main house too. See, while I was in Tokyo, Lucas and I had quietly been working on another project. Years ago, I'd loaned my parents a large sum when they couldn't keep up with the mortgage. It was a verbal agreement. They never paid it back. Lucas traced every deposit, compiled every wire transfer. We filed a lien on the house. They now owed me well over $80,000, which meant I had the legal grounds to force a sale. That night, Chloe called me. "Nolan, they're panicking. Your mom called mine in tears. Your dad's threatening to go public. Social media, the works." I exhaled. "Let him, I've got receipts. Let's see who wins that PR war." But what I didn't tell her, what I didn't tell anyone, was that this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure. Because what none of them ever understood was that I had given them everything. My time, my savings, my loyalty, and they mistook all of it for weakness. They thought I was a faucet, something to turn on whenever they were thirsty. Now, they were learning what thirst really felt like. And yet, the most satisfying moment hadn't even happened yet. Because the day the house finally went up for auction, I went back one last time. I parked across the street that morning, watching in silence. The air had that sharp, stale chill unique to early fall in our neighborhood. I sat in the car for a while, just taking it in. It felt surreal, seeing the house I grew up in, a place saturated with memory and tension, now fronted by a simple white sign. Notice of foreclosure. Auction today. No trespassing. I stepped out, hands in my pockets, and slowly walked toward the house. The door was already open. Lucas was inside, speaking with the auction rep, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with a clipboard and a brisk demeanor. He looked over and nodded when he saw me. "You don't have to be here for this," he said gently. "I want to be." And I did, not for the drama, not for vengeance, but because this moment needed a witness, someone to feel it, someone who wouldn't just let it disappear like everything else I'd swallowed over the years. I walked through the living room slowly, soaking it in. There was the dent in the hardwood from when Grant threw a baseball indoors, the faded carpet stain where Grant spilled nail polish and blamed it on me, the wall where my parents used to hang up our report cards and art, until they quietly stopped putting up mine. Strange how little of myself I saw here, like I'd always been a ghost in my own home. Next was the kitchen, that one hit harder. Late nights helping mom prep for Thanksgiving, washing dishes while she pretended not to hear dad shouting from the other room, laughing with Chloe over burnt pies and half-frozen turkeys. And now, just a kitchen for walls and the echo of forgotten effort. There was still a photo on the counter, all of us, taken 2 Christmases ago. I'd paid for the photographer, paid for the matching outfits they insisted on. They cropped me out when they posted it online. I picked up the photo, studied it for a long moment. Then I turned it face down. By noon, cars started rolling in, a couple of serious buyers, a few curious neighbors. And then my family, They pulled up in Dad's old Chevy. All four of them packed in like some warped family road trip. Grant stepped out first, face red and puffy behind oversized sunglasses. Grant followed, scowling, playing the enforcer. Then came my parents. My mom looked like she'd aged 10 years since I last saw her. My dad still carried himself like he owned the street. He saw me immediately. "Nolan," he called out, voice low and tight with anger. "We need to talk now." I didn't move. He stormed over, Grant close behind like a silent threat. "You're really going through with this?" Dad hissed. "You're going to humiliate your own family? Over what exactly?" "Some perceived slight." I met his eyes for the first time in years. "It's not a slight," I said calmly. "It's a pattern, and it ends today." "You ungrateful little," he began. I raised a hand. Don't. Grant walked up now, her voice breaking. "I'm going to lose my scholarship because of this. I already had to drop 2 classes." I turned to her. "I paid for your first 3 years. Every tuition bill, every textbook. You never said thank you, not once." "Instead," I said, "you let them convince you I was the problem." "I didn't," she started. "You posted online that I was unstable." I cut in, pulling out my phone. "You lie to strangers for money, and now you want sympathy?" Her face crumpled. Then, finally, Mom spoke. Her voice was hoarse. "We're a family. Nolan, families don't do this to each other." "No," I said quietly. "Families don't take like this. You took everything. My time, my money, my trust. And when I stopped giving, you called me selfish." The auctioneer's voice rang out just then, crisp and professional. "We'll begin the auction in 5 minutes." Dad looked around, his confidence cracking. "You can't do this. You wouldn't even have this house if it weren't for us." "You're right," I said, "which is why I'm taking it back." They stood there, rooted to the driveway, helpless for the first time in years. And I walked away. The house sold within the hour. A retired couple from out of town, looking to be closer to their grandkids, paid in full. I signed the papers, handed Lucas the keys, and never looked back. 3 weeks later, the moving truck arrived. My parents tried to fight it, claimed they had rights, but the court order was clear. 30 days from the sale, no exceptions. They didn't even pack everything, just grabbed what they could and left the rest in chaotic piles. Years of clutter, boxes of old trophies, broken appliances, forgotten memories. One of the movers found a journal of mine, buried in a box labeled junk. It was from high school. I flipped through it. Every page was full of goals. Get into college, start a business, buy a house, take care of my family. Funny how none of those dreams ended the way I thought they would. I donated the furniture, trashed the rest. Chloe helped me close out the estate. She was the only one who stayed neutral through it all, the only one I still trusted. When it was done, she hugged me tight. "You did the right thing," she whispered, "even if it doesn't feel like it yet." And she was right. It didn't feel good. Not in the triumphant, cinematic way I might have once imagined. There was no grand victory, no slow clap, no final showdown. Just silence, sharp, echoing silence. But eventually, that silence gave way to peace. I moved not long after, bought a small loft in another city, simpler, quieter, but mine. No secret bills, no guilt. The calls stopped, the emails faded, and over time, even the bitterness drained away. I didn't hate them, I just disconnected, like finally cutting the last frayed thread of a rope that had been dragging me underwater for years. One night, I sat on my balcony, sipping tea, watching the lights flicker across the street. I thought about that last Thanksgiving, about the toast Grant made, the way they all smiled like it was a commercial. Completely unaware, the glue holding them together was cracking. And then it hit me. They were never really a family. They were a system that only worked as long as I stayed silent, stayed useful, stayed small. And now, they had to figure out how to stand without me. Months later, I got an email from Grant. I don't expect a response. I just wanted to say, I get it now, and I'm sorry. I read it twice, then once more, and then I archived it. Not out of spite, but because I didn't need closure from them anymore. I already had it for myself, and for the first time in my life, that was enough.